Hey guys, Carter here with Patriot Training Center, and today I'm going to show you how to disassemble and do some basic maintenance on your AR, getting it clean and keeping it running for all the training that you're going to be doing. So let's get into it. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that this is unloaded, okay? So I'm going to lock this bolt back and check the chamber. Remove the magazine obviously first. Make sure there's nothing in there. Check the chamber. Okay, we're good. So I'm going to drop this bolt back down. And I'm going to go ahead and take the takedown pins out. So I like to actually take out both of them just so I can work on just the upper receiver. So the way you do that is you push these two takedown pins. So you push it out and it'll click this way. And then I'll do the same on this one. I'll set this down. Okay, we'll click out, and now I'm going to be able to take that apart, right? So we have our lower and we have our upper. Most of the work we're going to be doing is on the upper. So I'm going to go ahead and take the sling off because it'll make it easier. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and take my suppressor off. This is the dead air one, so it's a quick detach, so I just twist it off, pop it off like that. Especially when you guys are running suppressed, these things get dirty quick, so you want to stay on top of maintenance. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the bolt carrier out. So bolt carrier group comes out. We're going to set that aside, and then we're also going to pull our charging handle out. So that pops out of here like this. There's a little groove in here. So if you notice, if you just try and pull it out, that doesn't work. There's actually a little groove that you have to lift up on. So I don't know if you can see it in there, but there's a little notch, and then I lift up on it. Now I can pull it out, okay? So now we have the disassembled upper that we can work on, okay? So first things first, I always generally do an inspection. So making sure that all of my components are actually working properly. A quick little thing that I like to do is check gas rings. So while the bolt's put together, take your bolt and put it on the table like this. And if it doesn't move out, or if it doesn't collapse, then your gas rings are probably still pretty good. But if you drop it on the table and your bolt face just collapses under its own weight, then you should probably think about changing your gas rings. I'll get into that and show you what those are in a minute, but I wanted to make that quick note. So I'm going to go ahead and take apart this bolt carrier group as well and show you how to do that, and then we'll get into the cleaning part, okay? So the way you disassemble a bolt carrier group, you take this pin out right here that's retaining the firing pin. I'm just going to use a little hook right here, and that comes out pretty easily. Now I can pop that firing pin out. Sometimes you have to kind of give it a little bit of a knock. You can see it's pretty dirty. I just came back from a class where we shot a decent amount of rounds, so it's going to be a little bit dirty. So the next thing I'm going to do is there's a little cam pin in here. I'm going to turn that to where it's horizontal with the bolt carrier group. So it's in line with it. And then I'm going to pull that out. That pops out like so. Now I can pull the bolt out of the carrier, okay? So that comes out right here. So one of the things that I'm also going to be inspecting is just the general life of the bolt carrier. So one of the ways to keep your gun from malfunctioning is by staying on top of things that need to be replaced. these guns wear, the bolt definitely takes the most of the wear and tear. So that's going to go out probably first, especially if it's not a high quality one. So first thing I'm going to check on this bolt carrier group is the gas key. So as you can see in here, this gas key is staked in. So there's these little divots into the screws. We're just going to make sure that everything's tight right here and it's not rattling around. So that's pretty snug on there. Nothing to worry about here. Okay. Next, I'm going to look at the bolt, the actual bolt. So there's a few moving parts in this. The first thing is the extractor. So if you look in here, this is the extractor, and this actually hooks around the rim of the case and extracts the spent casing out. And then this part right here is the ejector. So the ejector pushes the round out, so it's under spring tension like this. So you can see this will move. It's a very heavy spring in there. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to disassemble this bolt a little bit more. I'm going to take the extractor out of it as well. So the way I do that is you get some sort of punch or a pin or whatever. You can actually use the firing pin as well, but you put pressure on this side of the extractor, and I just punch through this little pin. Okay. That comes out. Make sure you don't lose it. Now I can pull the extractor out. Okay. So another thing to look for when you're going through your inspection is inspecting your bolt lugs. This is one of the most common failures that I see in ARs that completely eat themselves, especially when you're running a different caliber like a 6.5 Grendel or maybe an AR-15 that's running 7.62 by 39. You're going to really have to watch these two bolt lugs right here because the bolt face is actually thinner to fit that bigger caliber, so you're really going to have to watch that. But even on a 5.56, these will shear over time, especially if it's a lower quality bolt carrier group. So if you want to come in and look at this, I'm inspecting for any abnormalities. So if I'm seeing any cracking or anything on these lugs right here, that's something that we want to address right away because that will lead to malfunctions and failure. So this one looks pretty good. Not seeing anything there. Once we clean it, we're going to also do another pre-combat inspection just to make sure everything's good. But I like to open it up and see what I'm working with first, and then I'll when I'm putting it back together, I'll be inspecting it the whole time. Okay, so I will start cleaning. So I have just some standard CLP. The first thing I do is I just go through and give everything a good douse of the cleaner and then start wiping stuff off. So making sure that we're getting all this nasty carbon off. I'll do it with a patch. Usually I'll do it with like a paper towel or something like that, but you can do it with a patch as well, and you'll see this thing will be real dirty once I take it off. So I'm just going to kind of scrub that. If you want, you can use like a nylon brush in some of the hard places that aren't really getting clean. And I just start scrubbing it down. I'm going to go through a lot of patches doing it this way. That's why I like using a paper towel. Okay. I'm going to stuff a cleaning patch down the where the bolt goes into the carrier group and wipe that out. That should be really slick in there. You should also take a look and make sure there's no real gouging in this hole right here. Everything's sealed up nicely. Okay. use some more cleaner. I'm just using a standard CLP on this. Some people like to do both. I just, I don't actually go too crazy and like making sure everything's scrubbed down. The main thing I'm doing is making sure that it's very well oiled, because most good rifles can run pretty dirty, but the worst thing that you can do to them is run them dry. And that goes for a lot of your handguns too. I'm gonna actually steal this paper towel off of this. It's gonna make my job faster. Okay. A lot of things you'll see on the internet, people are promoting really scraping these things down with different metals, especially when you start getting to your bolt. People will scrape them with a lot of metal tools. I don't like doing that just because you're risking changing the tolerances. When you scrape metal on metal, you can take material away, and these things are going to, they're very, very tight tolerances. So I don't like to scrub and take metal away. If I need to, I can use something polymer and like scrape the hard carbon off, but I don't like to use metal on metal. So I'm gonna get some more oil here, some cleaner, and I'm actually gonna use my brush for a minute here. So I'm just using if you can see, it's a nylon brush. Don't use wire brushes, metal brushes. Something easy and nice. It'll break up most of the stuff in here, but it's not gonna damage the actual part. Okay, so now I've got this bolt clean and the bolt carrier clean. I'm going to go through and make sure the extractor's all good. So I'm inspecting this piece right here to make sure there's no real like metal shavings or anything like that. You're going to see a little bit of like, if you're shooting brass, you're going to see brass like coloring, but you shouldn't see like chunks of metal or anything like that. Looks like everything's good here. I'll go ahead and give this a little bit of oil and wipe it off. I'm using a CLP, so it's kind of a cleaner and a lubricant, but using it as a cleaner, and then I'll go through and wipe it off and then add a little bit more oil. Okay, I'll add that oil. Okay, so let's move on to the firing pin. So let's take a look at this. You can see it's super, super dirty, but it's plated and it has oil on it, so it'll probably just wipe off like that. So I'm just basically wiping it off and gonna add some more oil to it. Make sure everything looks good. Check for like if it's, you know, broken on the tip or something like that, or you have some bad gouging. Just kind of inspecting everything to make sure that everything looks like it's in functioning order. Okay, so that's clean. I'm going to check this cam pin as well. So one thing you're watching out for here also, you're going to see wear on these pins, but you don't want to see any gouging or like chunks taken out. That could be out of spec. I've seen a lot of these actually be out of spec, and then it wears on your bolt carrier group, and you're going to have a ton of stoppages, and yeah, it's just not good. So normal wear is fine, but if you start seeing gouges or anything like that, you'll want to replace it. So let's put some oil on this. Just give it a nice coating. And that's done. Get that oiled up again. Okay, so we got all those parts done. Now I'm going to move to the upper. So as you can see in here, this is your chamber. So this is where your barrel extension is. This gets really nasty and dirty. You can see it gets nasty and dirty. I should be wearing gloves, but I'm not, because I usually don't, but you should wear gloves. So the first thing that I do is I drop a little oil on my rag and start just kind of brushing the inside of that chamber out, getting the carbon buildup out of there. And then I just do the whole upper, just kind of wipe it down. It's not like, you don't want it to get too gummed up in there, but like the gun's gonna run if it's dirty. It's just, it needs to be lubed up. So, and there's no point in running a super dirty gun. You might as well clean it. Just don't clean it to the point of taking materials away that would cause it to not work. So I'm just kind of running this napkin through here with the cleaner on it. Okay, so you can see it was decently dirty in there, but I hadn't had a stoppage. I'm just kind of staying up on it and making sure that it stays that way. Okay. All right, so now we're going to go to actually cleaning the bore. On a battle rifle like this, I don't do it a whole lot. You definitely should do it, but I'm not like crazy religious about doing it every certain amount of rounds. But you do want to do it every once in a while. On like a precision rifle, it's a little bit different. You're gonna be more your cadence on that's gonna be more frequent. But I'm going to use this pig lube cleaning kit to brush the bore of the rifle. So let's see, these are 5 inches. So I'm going to screw these together. Basically just needs to fit all the way down the barrel. Go for one more. Okay, now I'm going to take the 223 brush. I'm going to take the 223 brush and insert it, just screw it in here. And I usually just put oil on the actual brush. Some people run like a wet patch through it, but I just kind of oil up the brush. This is the cleaner, right? So it's cleaning and that. So I just get it wet. And then one thing that you definitely want to make sure you're doing is pulling it through, not pushing it and changing directions. So I'm going to go from the chamber and I take the brush and it goes like this. So I actually put this side down first and I drop it through like that. And now it's sitting like this, it stopped. So I'm going to need to pull this through. So I'm going to take the handle in this kit and screw it on here. And then pull it through. Okay, so Alright, I'm going to do it a couple more times, and then we'll put a patch in there and clean it up a little bit. Same thing. I'm going to re-oil it a little bit. So take this off every time. Re-oil. look through again. Make sure that you're not like totally gouging this thing. It's not going to make that big of a difference. These are brass, not steel, but why put the extra wear on, right? Okay. I'm just going to put this on here. Okay. I'll pull it through again. All right. So I'm going to run a patch through here next to kind of wipe up all the carbon that we've broken up with this brush. So I'm going to take this loop right here, and I usually I see if I could put 2 in there, but there's a little slot right here. You just see if you can get it through there and then pull it through. Okay, so I just get it like that, where it's gonna stay in place, it's not gonna fall out. And you screw it in and do the same thing that you did with the brush. Okay, so I'm going to drop it through. I'm just going to pull it out like that. You can see in here, it's not crazy dirty. That's why I don't like do it that much. This is a battle gun. Like, it's not super duper precision, so my cadence on this isn't crazy high. All right. Do that a couple more times. Okay. Cool. So now that we have that done, I'm going to brush out the chamber. So I'm going to use this brush, which is a chamber brush. You can see it's the same shape as this part fits in the actual extension where the feed ramp is and all of that, and then this fits where the case goes. So you can put this in here into this side and just kind of brush it out. Make sure it's all cleaned and broken up in there, and then I'll run a chamber star through it to make sure that it's mopped up. Okay, so same thing, I'm going to oil this up. All right. You don't have to use as much line this time, so I'm going to shorten this. Make it easier. So this way you are putting it in this way, but you're not going down the bore. So I'm going to come in here like this. I'm going to drop it in. Just kind of brush it out. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to put the chamber star in here and make sure that that's all wiped up, because I just broke the carbon up with a brush. So I'm going to pop this off of here. Now, these are little chamber swabs. They're kind of nice. You just you put them on this little grommet thingy, and you poke them through. And you screw it back on. Not all cleaning kits have them, but it is nice to keep this thing tightened down, and it really gets that chamber nice and clean. Okay, so it's on there like that. I'm going to put this back on here. All right, make sure this is oiled. I'll take this. And I'll pop it down in there in this chamber. So you can see it's getting nice and dirty. Okay. Cool. Now that's all cleaned up. The next thing I do, I just want to make sure everything is nice and oiled up. So I'm going to start putting it back together now. After I've kind of inspected everything, I'm going to oil it and we'll put it back together. Okay, so I'm going to put the bolt back together first. So I got to put the extractor back on. So make sure you didn't lose any parts. There's on this particular bolt, there's an O-ring and a little polymer piece inside the spring. So this is going to be put right here. And we got to put that pin in. So this pin right here goes back in. So I'm going to put pressure on that spring. And pop it in. So I'm going to press it. Make sure it's all lined up. All right, now it just pops in. Make sure that it's even on both sides. You don't want it poking out too much, because you'll start getting it binding up on your receiver or on your actual carrier. So make sure that it's recessed in here and not poking out too far to one side. All right, now I'm going to oil this a lot. So I keep mine very oiled. Could be a little bit excessive, but I don't really care if it spits at me. I just want it to run. So I kind of overdo it on the oil. And now I'm going to go back into the carrier. So make sure that you're doing this the right way. There's a right way and a wrong way. You won't be able to do it on most carriers the wrong way because one of the sides isn't the right size, but make sure that your extractor is out to the right if I'm looking down this way. So the extractor needs to be on this side. That way it just needs to be facing the ejection port. That way it can pull the round out and the ejector will spit it out that way. So okay, so I pop that in there and you'll see there's the hole, and that's where the cam pin goes. So you have to press it down to this part of the channel to get it around this gas key so I can actually drop this into here. now. All right. So if I were to just do that, my firing pin won't go in because there's a hole right here, right? So I need to switch it back. So this needs to be turned from here to here. Okay, now I can drop this firing pin in. Make sure it has a good coat of oil on it. Now I'm going to just drop it through the back here and then set it down in here. Okay, so then I just need to put this retaining pin in, and that just pops in. Well, make sure that the firing pin's in all the way, and then it will pop in. Okay, so now that is retained. Everything's working as properly as it should. We're good to go ahead and put it back in the receiver. So let's put the charging handle in first. Make sure that's all good and oiled up. All right. That goes in. You put it in like halfway, like that. And then you have to make sure that your bolt carrier is in the out position to put this in. So you can just pop it out like that. And now I'm putting it in right here. The gas key rides in this charging handle. And just slide it in. Okay, now it's in place. Okay, now press all that in. Make sure everything's locked into place. I'll close the dust cover, then go ahead and put the upper back on the lower. So pop these lugs back in. Oh, that's way. Make sure that your takedown pins are all the way out. Okay, now I'm popping them back into place. There you go. So obviously I'm going to wipe this down. I have a bunch of excess oil on it, so I'll just wipe it down and make sure it's not getting all over my clothes and stuff. And you want to do a function check, make sure everything's working. I'm going to lock the bolt back. Check everything, drop the bolt. Make sure that the safety and all of that works. So fire control group works. Okay, everything's good to go. So that's how you clean an AR-15 and keep it lubed up and ready to go out and train and keep it ready for battle.